Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your normal partners in crime, Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm great. I don't know if you guys knew this about me, but I'm a huge Buffalo Sabres fan. I've been waiting to wear this shirt for about 2.5 years, and I think that I feel good enough to come out and start jumping on the bandwagon of the Buffalo Sabres.
If I remember right, you were a huge fan for like 10 games last year.
I had a little bit of a trial, a free membership, trial fanship last year for about 10 games, and I dropped off the world.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to learn myself. It's ugly. It's frustrating to know so little about a sport and embarrass yourself, but I'm working through it.
Nice, man.
For tonight, we are very excited to have a special guest on. Many of you may know him from what is the most successful SB Nation podcast out there, Bleeding Green Nation. The others may know him as the mean guy that makes the Josh Allen quicksand videos. Michael Kist. Michael, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm both of those things. So yeah, Bleeding Green Nation, put it in any podcast app. You can hear us talking on there. And you also see me on the timeline acting a fool about the Bills. So right now I'm just being angry about the Eagles. So it'll probably be much more fun for all the Bills fans. If you want to get on the train now, it'd be a good time for you.
Yeah, no, hey, misery loves company, so I'm sure that we'll send some people your way. Let's kind of kick things off there. I know that I for one was in one of those discussions where the Eagles were right there for one of my Super Bowl picks, and I don't think that's done. I think that 3-4 is certainly plenty of room to come back from things, but it's below expectation, and part of that is injury, part of that is performance. Just give us a little bit of insight on what are things like within Eagles Nation, within the community, and then what you think of where the team is compared to maybe where you expected.
Yeah, I think it's full on panic mode right now with a very important game dropped to the Cowboys where the team just didn't show up to play. There's rumors coming out of the locker room. People are talking with Josina Anderson, and then they're directly contradicting themselves to the press about people being late for meetings and whatnot. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And there seems to be either Doug's message isn't getting through to the team, and I think there was a little bit of that last year, but he was able to correct it, or there's a leadership problem across the board. I mean, we recently saw Chris Long basically come out and defend Carson Wentz, saying he's not the problem. And I agree with him for the most part, even though the game against the Cowboys was the worst that he's had. But there is a huge issue with this team, from a coaching perspective, from a developmental perspective, from a scheme perspective. And the problem is right now what this team needs. And the reason that they're not meeting the expectations that many had for them coming into the season, which was possible Super Bowl contender, probable playoff team, definitely in the hunt for top in the NFC East. We didn't think the NFC East was going to be like this bad as far as their records go. But the reason they haven't met that is because they've needed Carson to be perfect. And if he's not perfect, even when he is perfect, they're near perfect, they've lost games. But when he's not perfect, if he has a good to average game, and he had a good game against the Vikings, he had an average game against the Vikings, let's get it right, poor game against the Cowboys. When it's worked out like that, they've gotten blown out. They've gotten blown out early. I mean, this defense is historically giving up points in the first half right now, and they're just not able to catch up. So the defense is the main problem. There's a long list of things. Carson Wentz kind of getting in his own head kind of worries me right now moving forward.
Yeah, no, Bills fans are familiar with Jim Schwartz, and Bills fans clamor up until McDermott came here. Bills fans were clamoring for Jim Schwartz. Is there any pressure on him right now in the Philadelphia media with the letdown of this defense? Because the pieces are there, and yes, there have been some injuries, but you're starting to get some of these guys back, right? We saw your cornerbacks are starting to come back. It looks like Darby's going to be a full participant this week. So guys are coming back. Is that seat getting hot for Schwartz, or is his historical body of work in Philly going to keep him there for a while?
No, it's too reactionary of a fan base. But Schwartz took some fire for last year when the defense kind of underperformed, but they were also one of the most banged up defenses in the league, and I get that. I thought he had some masterpieces. Against the Rams was one of his best games, I thought. He hasn't had or put together one of those this year, and I think that's the problem. And we understand that the defense is a little banged up and whatnot, but he's not putting his players in a position to succeed. He's making it worse on them, and I think that Cowboys game was a brilliant example of that. The Vikings torched them for the exact reasons that we worried about coming into the game. Play action is a problem for them. The deep shots, they're bad against post, they're bad against goes. It's been the same stuff all season, and they have not adjusted whatsoever. I would say after every game, we put out a tweet from the BGN radio account. We say, give us 3 words to describe this game. And every week there's at least like one or two fire Jim Schwartz if they give up like 20 or more points. This last game, I mean, it was the whole thing. We had 500 responses, and I guarantee you 100 of them were talking about Jim Schwartz at the very least. So I think the seat is getting hot. And I think this team, if they can't turn this around from a leadership perspective, one of the coordinators is probably going to find himself on the outs. See the micro of the offensive coordinators, Jim Schwartz, and they'll promote Corey Unlin and see what he can do, because there seems to be a disconnect between Schwartz and Unlin from the technique that they're teaching to the scheme that they're deploying. So we'll see.
And I know it's tough. Aaron and I were talking a little bit, and he put out a couple of good messages about the challenge of now facing the Eagles when they're backed in a corner, coming in desperate, very focused. And that I think there's kind of that each side of the coin there as you're coming into that. And like you said, is there some validity to some of the reports out there? Are there fissures in the locker room? Are there issues? I personally was rooting for a Eagles victory Sunday night, to have them come in fat and happy, big emotional rivalry win, maybe overlook this game a little bit. But now I certainly think that we're going to get every bit of that focus. And, you know, it's cheesy. It's a non-conference game. It's not for impact and tiebreakers in the division. So it's not something that's a make or break game in the season, or that it has that much, you know, gravitas from a rivalry standpoint and the emotional element of it. But I do think that it is an important element within there. You have this and then the Bears game before the bye, and that
you can't drop 3 in a row.
Yeah, you certainly can't go in and then be put into a position where you're 3-6 or something crazy going into the bye. So what do you think we're going to see coming into that with that level of focus or that level of attention?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because playoff implications aren't really that huge on this game, even if the Eagles were to drop it. But, I mean, if they drop it, like you said, that's 3 losses in a row. And this is a team, like I said, with a leadership problem at the moment. The message hasn't gotten through, and it's a bit of a fractured locker room. They've cleaned that up before. I mean, there were doubts about this team. The season was over when Carson Wentz went down in 2017. Doug was able to rally the troops and have everybody buy in, and everybody bought in, and it worked. Last year, after the Saints game, the season was over. Week 14, after the Dallas game, the season was over. They rallied for stretches in both periods, won a playoff game last year. So they've been in this spot before. If there's anyone that I trust in the NFL to kind of get right and get back and get a message through the team, it's definitely Doug Peterson. So I'm not panicking in that regard. He does a great job when it comes to that. It's up to the players to respond. And right now they're not executing very well. You can look at the Cowboys game. I can't tell you who played well, other than maybe a couple of guys, and it's everybody. It's not just the young guys. It's not just the old guys. It's everybody, and I don't think they're scheming it up great either. So that's kind of where I'm at. Their back is up against the wall. I don't know how much that means with this team right now. I can't say for sure until they show me, you know. So it's kind of like a catch-22 with that.
I think, you know, before I get into the next question, I do think that for the benefit of the Bills fans here, that the Bills had the benefit of kind of maybe sleeping for a half on the Miami Dolphins. And I think that they put that on film, and that's been a priority here this week, to not come out here and sleep on a team that has had a couple losses in a row. So I think they'll give the full effort where they did it against the Dolphins. I just don't know if they'll be able to match the effort of a desperate team, which was kind of in line with some of my tweets and stuff going forward. I want to talk about your defense, though, a little bit, because Bills fans aren't going to want to hear this. You've been pretty vocal about how you feel about Josh Allen and some of the stuff you've seen from Josh Allen. The Bills ranked 26 in offensive DVOA going into this game. It hasn't all been pretty. Bills fans are pretty excited about some of the development and some of the things that we're seeing. Obviously, our standard is a lot lower than it might be over in Philly for what we expect and where we expect him to be this year. But what is the sense of Philly reporters, fans of the team, that this is an offense that they may be able to rebound against and get a guy like Josh Allen to make some mistakes and get that defense trending back into the right direction? Do you guys feel pretty good about this matchup?
I mean, I don't feel good about any matchup. We were coming into the Vikings game, and we kind of called it the Kirk Cousins litmus test to see how good this defense was, because, you know, he's bad against, you know, great teams, and he's really good against bad ones. Turns out we're a really bad defense, because he torched the Eagles to shreds. And then Dak Prescott, who was coming off a shaky performance against the Jets, comes out, and him and Kellen Moore just pants Jim Schwartz. So then you look at Buffalo, and they haven't had like the ups and downs of Dallas. They've been just kind of like a flat line. And I at one point I called their offense inept, to the chagrin of much of Bill's Mafia. But I mean, that's
your poor mentions.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the merit of it. They're not putting up points. I mean, Josh Allen has made developments in his game, I think, quicker than I had expected. With the quick game, The processing there, pre-snap, I think he's doing better there as well. Intermediate accuracy has been better for him. There's still the big bugaboo of the deep ball. So the deep ball opportunities for the Eagles have been bad. They are busting all over the place, and they cannot run with these guys. You get John Brown on Rasul Douglas, I guarantee you that's a foot race that Rasul Douglas is not winning. I don't care how far off Jim Schwartz plays. I don't care if it's 13 yards before the snap. He's not winning that. But Josh Allen has to hit that, and to stay on the field to create more opportunities like that, he's got to continue to have success with the quick game and the short to intermediate areas as well. But I think he can do that. I think the big thing is, can they get the explosive play? If they can't, then I think the Eagles offense can keep up against a really tough Buffalo defense. If they start hitting shots like it's the Vikings game, it's going to be a runaway, and then you're going to see Carson press, and it's going to be bad.
Well, I think let's continue down that path. It's interesting that we're going to have almost strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness. Even within the offense, you still have the depth of the defensive line, and obviously Jernigan's not back, and it seems like everything's clean with Cox and whatever nonsense was going on there. But you have the 8 deep across the defensive line, and a lot of the challenge has been the coverage in the back end. Well, that doesn't match up exactly with Buffalo, where we're doing well with some steady between the tackles blocking, getting linemen moving, leaning on defensive lines that you can get tired in the second half. That works easier when it's not an 8-man rotation getting through there. And then, I do have some hope that we're going to see a little bit of actually exactly what you touched on, hoping that we get that cushion from John Brown, that they're afraid of that. And then you get those 16-yard comebacks and those quick hitches when they're giving them the cushion. That's honestly what John Brown has lived on so far this year, is tons of 15 to 20-yard catches and not the bombs. And so I'm curious to see where that's going to come into play and which one is going to write that. Is it going to be that Buffalo finally hits on some of those deep shots because it's there to be had, or because we don't have the accuracy, because Josh misses on a couple of those, does this let the Eagles get a little bit, more confident and healthier there to be able to feel better about that, because they're not able to hit those and then all of a sudden bring that pressure with the front. And I think that's going to be honestly where the game's decided, is who's able to capitalize on what's been a weakness so far.
Yeah, and I think Buffalo can really capitalize on what the Eagles are doing, even if it's not the deep ball, death of 1,000 cuts type of deal. We saw last year that teams were avoiding the Eagles pass rush where it was 7 weeks in a row. The quarterback had a time to throw that was less than 2.4 seconds. Yeah. I can't imagine. I don't remember any other team kind of dealing with that. It's because there's a disconnect between the coverage and the way they have their box, right? No team in the NFL, this is actual stat, no team in the NFL stacks the box more than Philadelphia. So you're getting a disconnect between your first level, your second level. You got your cornerback in a bail technique running 13 yards off, right? You do a curl in front of him. Where's his help? Well, his help's coming from the box. He's not getting over there. It's just not happening. You run play action. These linebackers on the Eagles are a liability. They are flowing harder than anybody else. And Dallas did a great job of exploiting them. They had a lot of misdirection, and they were able to get access to large swaths of space against the Eagles. So it's not just the deep shot, but you can influence this defense, and you can also slow down this pass rush. You move the pocket on them to where it's not, they're just pinned ears back going. There's an issue, and you can – the areas of space that the Schwartz defense is giving up right now is just unbelievable. So they may stop the run because that's what they set out to do. But the Eagles' run defense, and this is a weird thought, the Eagles' run defense is so good, it's actually a detriment to the defense because the resources that they spend trying to stop the run. And if you can get them misdirection and flowing because they're coming so hard against the run, there's areas all across the field, short, intermediate to deep, to where you can beat them.
And that's interesting too, because Eric pointed out in our premium Slack channel the number of play action this past weekend in his breakdown of Josh Allen, and how Dable drew up a lot more. I think it was like 30-something%. I think he was third in the league last week. I don't know if my numbers are right. I don't have a great memory, but I got
a number for you on that though. The play action.
Yeah.
Combined quarterbacks against the Eagles with play action, 127 quarterback rating. The top play action quarterback in the league is Patrick Mahomes with 115.
Yeah, and that's
the Eagles are giving up better than Patrick Mahomes.
I think it's trending for, at least for Bills fans. I think you could probably expect to see a heavy dose of play action this week, like we saw last week, because it was something that put Josh Allen in success. And I'm sure that they're seeing the same thing you're mentioning on film, and that's a way to attack the Eagles defense. Is it primarily, you think, them wanting to stop the run that is putting them in detriment in the play action game?
Yeah, I mean the linebackers flow so hard, and it's giving the defensive rush something to think about before they go and get the quarterback. And by that time, the linebackers are way over here, and your deep safety's way over here, and you've got all this space right in here, and they're having real issues. I mean, Nathan Gary is one of the biggest space cadets on the team right now. You watch him at any point. Number one, he's slow to read it. Number two, when he goes into his zone, guy does a full 180 turn and he's running around trying to follow Nigel Bradham, who's hurt now, but follow Nigel Bradham to see where he's supposed to go. These linebackers are number one, they don't have a whole lot of experience, especially with Bradham out. Number two, they're just lost in space and they cannot cover.
Nathan Geary is one of our biggest space cadets too. So
yeah, I mean his name's terrible. I mean that's half his battle.
Yeah, I can imagine. I agree 100%. So imagine Nathan Geary in coverage, and you've got the Eagles linebackers basically.
Well, you touched on the misdirection as well, because a lot of Bills fans have kind of been frustrated we don't see more of the play action, and it's actually been very game plan specific in that we've had 2 full games with 0 play action snaps, and then some with 30% plus. So it's when they think it's there, they lean heavy into it. When it's not, we see none of it. So yeah. I do expect to see some on Sunday. But we've also seen a pretty consistent idea with the jet motion, the fake jet motion, and that constant movement, especially with Isaiah McKenzie, who, man, he hit the turbo button this past week, and that I was not prepared for him to be able to actually accelerate that quickly. And that he's put a lot of tension on defenses, especially, like you said, inexperienced linebackers that they fake it 4 to 5 times as often as they give it, but it gives that eye candy, and that, you know, somebody like Frank Gore isn't going to beat you with speed, but if you give him a step, he's going to get past you and is going to fall forward, and it's not going to be the 80-yard touchdown, but he hits a ton of those 12-yard runs because he gets the eyes going the other direction.
He's the smartest running back in the league that I've studied. You know, I've done a full eval on him in the past, and I was just blown away by how smart the guy is. And you're right, a lot of different misdirection. You don't have to. You can do misdirection in a multitude of ways. And jet sweep is another way to influence guys that are having problems with run fits and communication before the snap. That's going to be a big thing for the Eagles. They also have a problem with 21 personnel. Coming into the game of the Cowboys, they were giving up a 58% success rate to 21 personnel plays. So whether that's 2 tailbacks or you got a running back and a fullback in there with DeMarco, and you start taking shots off that, because those are the looks that Schwartz likes to run blitz with, like Rodney McLeod, his safety, and that's what gives you that deep shot area. There's a whole litany of ways you can beat this team, and the main thing is show them one thing and then just do the other. It's very, very simple.
Now let's flip it over to the other side of the ball, because obviously this is a strength for the Bills. But all the games I've watched, I've liked what I've actually seen out of the Philadelphia Eagles offense, except for, like you said, when they get down, I think they do press a bit trying to get back in the game. So if they can keep it close, that this offense worries me. Specifically, what worries me with your offense is Jordan Howard. I've been a fan of the guy for a long time. After what I saw Miami Dolphins do to this Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier defense last week and running right up the middle, watching Jordan Howard do that same thing for years concerns me, and it's been an Achilles heel of the Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier defense since they got here. Obviously, the personnel is better. I think last week guys were a little bit out of position more than we're used to seeing. I think Bills kind of have the opposite of what you described the Eagles' problem on defense is. I think Bills are technically usually in position. They don't always have the best talent at every position, but they're in position to make plays, playing that 1 of 11. How do you anticipate the Eagles attacking a defense that plays pretty sound defense across the board?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I don't think the matchups are really in the favor of the Eagles. Like, who's going to get open on Trey White? I mean, really, the guy that you're looking at is probably Levi Wallace. And, I mean, unless you get Alshon on him, who Alshon hasn't exactly been a world beater. They've had to manufacture like shield screens to him just to get him involved in the game. I think this is going to have to be a heavy tight end game. But even there, Buffalo's been really solid in limiting production from opposing tight ends. Now, the Eagles are a different beast with Ertz and Goddard and what they can do with their 12 personnel packages and whatnot. But I would imagine that what they'll try to do is start stretching the seams and get to the safeties a little bit by stretching with Goddard and then bringing Sanders on the bus route or the wheel route or whatever the case may be. They're going to have to send multiple vertical routes at these guys. It's either that or they're just going to have to be just as technically sound as the Bills are on defense and matriculate the ball down the field, because right now they're lacking that explosive element of Deshaun Jackson on the field, and they're having to kind of grind out these drives because they're having problems manufacturing these big shot plays. So they're going to have to do that. The problem is their execution hasn't been fantastic. Number one, because part of the running game, half the running game is bad because Miles Sanders is bad and inexperienced and can't make reads. That's why you need, and props to you. Jordan Howard has played really, really well this year. Disciplined football, knows the holes to hit. When the offensive line is bumping, Jordan Howard will eat. Jordan Howard's not going to create a whole lot on his own, but he's going to hit the right holes and he's going to finish strong. So I think this needs to be a Jordan Howard game. Let Miles Sanders do the receiving stuff. Now the problem is when Miles Sanders is, are you tipping off what you're about to do? That may start to become a problem because they're phasing out Sanders of the running game. So, like I said, they just have to be technically sound, just as much so as the Bills are, and just take what's there. And Carson did not do that last week. He did not take what was there. He had the longest time to throw that he's had in his career at 3.16, which was just a total aberration for this year. And his pocket management was really bad too. Like, it wasn't just on the offensive line. It wasn't on the coverage. It wasn't on the receivers. It was on Carson too. And he's got to get right. So if Carson can play well, they can move the ball against pretty much any defense. The Bills, though, man, I mean, they're going to be tough to get those chunk plays on. So it might be a bit of a grinder for them.
That's really where I think a piece of it's going to come in. Do we get Matt Milano back? I think if we have our full complement and you can use, we have, multiple big nickel guys that come in from a safety standpoint. Teron Johnson does a nice job there. Both Edmonds and Milano are good in coverage. Obviously, Poyer and Hyatt are excellent from a safety standpoint. We're as equipped as any team can be to manage a combination of Goddard and Ertz and Sanders out of the backfield, or whoever is coming out of there and who's healthy. We're able to do that. If Milano's not healthy, I absolutely am concerned about that. If we're cobbling that together, Lorenzo Alexander still has value in this league. It's not in coverage. It's not chasing Zach Ertz across, as a crosser across the field. So getting into that space is really where I think a big piece is going to be. We saw Milano back practicing today, and I think he's coming back. The hamstrings are tricky, and I think that's certainly not easy. And I think there's a chance of not perfect weather this weekend as well that could be a factor that comes into play. And I think a piece of this, it sounds like Deshaun Jackson and what he's dealing with doesn't sound realistic for this week. No. That's a concern that I've had, in that, if you're going to beat Trey White or Levi Wallace, it is with just straight deep speed, because you brought it up with the execution. Last week, we saw people got frustrated with Levi Wallace because he ended up having like 7 solo tackles and a lot of things tackled right in front of him. Yeah. But it's because that's how the defense is designed, and that we're going to bet you can't execute 8-yard catches all the way down the field for sustained drives, and that eventually we'll tip it, we'll get to you, it'll be incomplete, you're not going to be able to convert it. But if you do pull together a drive that Jeffrey or Aguilar or Ertz is able to get right in front of him over and over again, you can do that. They'll just bank on it that, hey, you can't do it over and over again.
Yeah, and the Eagles are going to have to put together drives like that. They're going to have to get some of their identity back. There was an 8-play, 76-yard drive they had against the Packers that was perfect. And, they didn't have Deshaun for that. The offense was a bit condensed. But they were working play action from under center. They were running power concepts as well. This offensive line is fantastic because they can run power and, gap and zone stuff and do a lot of diverse things and get on the move and get on the hoof and really get to that second level. They were doing RPO things, and they were nice, clean, and efficient with it and whatnot. And they started to impose their will. They might have to start to do that. And actually, a question for you guys with the status of Milano. If the Eagles come out in 12 personnel, we saw them have success in the run game against the Green Bay Packers because the Packers were only deploying one linebacker. It's a serious size disadvantage, and Zach Ertz doesn't get enough credit for his uptick in blocking ability over the years. And Dallas Goedert's one of the best young blocking tight ends in the league as well. How would Buffalo respond to that? Do you think they're as in much trouble as the Packers were in that situation, or are they more equipped to deal with that?
I think it's tough because last week we saw really the Dolphins do whatever they wanted in the run game without Milano. And I think when I looked back and watched the film, the interior line got pushed around a little bit, but in the past we've seen Milano come in on some of those holes. And I think fans get upset. Star Latulippe is a guy that fans are always upset with, but he takes on double teams and he does get pushed out of the way, but those gaps are usually filled by Edmonds or Milano. And I think it puts too much pressure on Edmonds. I think not having Milano next to him caused him to maybe overplay some things and press kind of how he was playing. So, without Milano, I do get concerned. I like Lorenzo Alexander in the run game, but I do see they lack the speed and the athleticism to allow those big guys up front to clog some space. There's some opportunities there for the Eagles if Milano isn't going to go. And even Corey Thompson had a good preseason, and if he can get back healthy, that's an upgrade to Mo Alexander, who should never be playing defensive football for this team. But I was actually surprised, and maybe, Greg, you can kind of get on this. I was surprised we didn't see more of the big nickel or another safety brought in. We didn't see a lot of Sarah Neal or really anybody else besides Mo Alexander and Lorenzo Alexander. So maybe they try to do something like that because the film was so bad this week if Matt Milano's not good to go.
Yeah, I mean, the just I'll get it right back to you, Greg. I'm sorry, but the Eagles once a game tend to go like 13 personnel, or they're bringing a 6 offensive linemen, and they're just saying, you know what, we're going to get our offensive line back on track. We're going to try to run it down your throats, and typically it works for them to get them back on track. So that may be something to look for in this game.
Well, and it's obviously a trade-off of what they're building. I think that the Bills, Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, have built the prototypical modern NFL defense. We have versatile safeties, versatile linebackers, great in coverage. We have guys like an Ed Oliver, who's an undersized defensive tackle who can penetrate and make noise. Well, the flip to that is if you have 3 linebackers who were actually safeties at one point, Mo Alexander, Matt Milano, and Corey Thompson are all 6 foot 230, and then you have 280-pound defensive tackles. The flip side to that is if a team has the discipline to stay in that personnel and just pound it at you, I think they can. So it's all, so far they've dared them, and that every modern NFL offensive coordinator doesn't have it in them to run the ball 45 times, and they're just banking on the fact that we bet you won't, and that they go with that, and that, hey, we're really good at everything else, and that, but that is the trade-off, is that it's really hard to be great at both and to have size and lateral quickness and have all the different things that you need to do both. So I don't mind that they're leaning into where the league is going and being really, really good at pass defense. But the counter to that is if a team has the discipline to just punch us in the mouth over and over again, I think it's actually possible.
Yeah, and the Eagles have been a more run-heavy team that they have in the past, and it's a big conversation point in Philadelphia. I mean, 3rd and 4, they tried to run. They had it blocked up perfectly. The centers just missed the hole. But, I mean, they have gone more run than we have seen them with Doug Peterson ever in his tenure here. So I think they definitely will try that. And if they can – I don't want to say establish it earlier because you don't need the run game to work to start hit and play action and have that work. But if they can just get in a rhythm early, and this has been one of the slowest starting offenses in the league over the past couple of years, if they can get a little bit of confidence in that first drive and start to impose their will a little bit, and the offensive line is feeling themselves, they're kind of volatile. They're kind of tricky like that. The offensive line is really good talent wise, but when they're not working together as a cohesive unit, it looks bad. But when they are on and clicking, it is fantastic. So if they can establish a flow early on in the game with the run game working, I think that the Eagles can have some success trying to play some bully ball early on in this game, and then see how the Bills respond, and then you start to open up the passing game a bit.
Well, you're not kidding about the start thing. I couldn't believe it. We've talked a lot about, hey, the first team to score, really sets the tone. And, besides the Jets game, which is weird, you guys were going up against a comically bad team, down 20-7 to Washington, down 10-0 to Green Bay. Even the games you guys have won and it looked really good in the end. You guys have dug yourselves quite a hole to start things off. You're not kidding about the amount of points let up early. I think that obviously is going to be an indicator here if they get right. Are the Bills able to jump out to a lead like these other teams have, or is it, again, the weakness versus weakness? Is the Bills, offense being behind the clock, is that going to end up helping the Eagles get right? Because it seems like the rest of the game, you guys got to have things figured out.
Right. Yeah. Opening is going to be big. And I know per EPA, they were 30th in the league in their opening scripted plays, the first 15 plays last year. And I'm sure it's not any different this year. This team cannot score in the first quarter. They're starting to move the ball against the Cowboys on the first drive, and then you get a fumble. Next drive, you get a fumble. And it's like, man, this game is done already. This is just the way it is. But if this team can kind of come in and get that first score on the board, I don't know if Doug is going to defer or not, or however that's going to work with them. But if they get the ball first and they score, I think they have a totally different mentality for the rest of the game, because they're finally feeling like, they're not up against it immediately, which they have been in every game. Carson Wentz threw 8 passes. They were down 27-10 at half. Carson Wentz threw 1 pass. They were down 24-3 to the Vikings. Like they got to get up in these games and get Carson flowing before things get out of hand. That's going to be key for them.
Yeah, I think you've nailed really my biggest concerns about this game when I watch the Eagles is exactly what you said of if they have the discipline to run it at the Bills defense. Historically, though, I think the Achilles heel of this defense is teams that are able to really muscle up and run at them, especially right up the middle. I think that is probably the best game plan for the Eagles to take in this game and just grind it out and get out of Buffalo with maybe an ugly, low-scoring, just – hate to say it, establish the run and just kind of bully them around. And that is what concerns me about this game. Kind of just to wrap up in full, overall, how do you feel about this game? How do you feel about the flow of this game? And if you could leave us with a prediction, and we're going to put you on the spot and get a prediction for this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a big test for Buffalo. I mean, they've beaten a lot of tomato cans, and they have hung in there tough with New England when they came to their place. And Josh Allen got hurt and everything like that, but it definitely wasn't his best game. It was one of his worst games. And I don't know what it is about the New England defense that magically makes quarterbacks, their brains just turn into oatmeal, but it seems to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is a big game for them, not because the Eagles are so tough right now, but I think it's a better win than they've had so far this season if they can get that done, and they can kind of shake off that criticism of maybe they're a paper tiger, like I've said. So that's big for them. Then you've got the Eagles with their backs up against the wall, and they can be dangerous that way. I still don't feel great about this Eagles defense. Even with the Bills offense, I don't think is very good and has problems hitting the deep ball. If there's any team to get right against right now with your offense, it's the Eagles, and they have a lot of issues. And I think the blueprint on how to beat this team is out there, and it's going to be hard to stop for them moving forward. So I think the Bills kind of get right on offense. This Bills defense is tough, man. Like I have a hard time predicting the Eagles to win at this point because of the way that they played recently, the execution that they've had. They're one of the worst tackling teams in the NFL, by the way. Not only is their coverage bad, they can't tackle anybody. That's not a winning formula. Their defense is only ranked so high as like 15th in DVOAs because they went from 22 to 6th after the Jets week, and they haven't fully opponent adjusted yet at DVOA. Right. So, no, I feel bad about this game on the road for the Eagles, and I think they drop it. I think they do. I don't think it's a shootout or anything like that. I think it's a bit of a grinder, and I think Buffalo ends up getting it done. And I'll give Josh Allen credit for one thing for sure. This dude puts it behind him, and if they need to put a drive together late, that dude is a gamer. Like, I wish he was more of a gamer when it's not required for him to be a gamer, so he didn't always have to be a gamer, like kind of thing. Like, if you put it together for a little bit more. He wasn't the problem with Buffalo last week against Miami for the most part, but at the same time, he could also put Miami away on a deep shot that he missed by about 8 yards. So then again, he also has a 98-yard touchdown drive. So there's good and bad there. But I think Josh plays well in this game against a bad Eagles defense, and I think y'all get the win.
No, we appreciate it.
Like
we'll hope you're right. But no, we appreciate it for everybody listening here. If you haven't had a chance, honestly, just phenomenal work that you do over there. And with your
great follow on Twitter.
Yeah, a really entertaining follow. Not always the most fun for Bills fans, but you can get. I will say you engage with fans as well as anybody I've seen. That you give it right back. You have a good time with it, and I think that's what social media is all about. It's a lot of fun. You and your partner, Mr. Solak, out there, I don't know if he's like an emancipated minor or if like the schedule is going to open up after he graduates high school here. Yeah. But once you get rolling, the show you guys have is fantastic, and the numbers you guys are pulling in are amazing. So, anybody who hasn't had a chance to go out there, check out Bleeding Green Nation, check out everything they have going on over there in SB Nation. Just an awesome follow and a great show. Anything else that the people can find from you here before we let you go?
Yeah, man, just put Bleeding Green Nation, into your podcast app, and we're gonna have awesome preview shows for this, both offensively, defensive side. We'll really dig into it. So if you enjoy it, stick around with us. I think you will. And I just want to extend an olive branch to Bills fans. I sympathize and empathize with Bills fans, I think, more than any other fan base. And as much as I argue with Bills Mafia, I freaking love the passion. I love it. I love that they come after me the way that they do when I talk down on their team. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what we're here for. I might mute a bunch of you, but some of you, are really, really funny with the way that you insult me. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact that you're diseased fans, just like Eagles fans are as well, because it wasn't all roses for them throughout their history. That Super Bowl is really recent, and the shine's already wearing off. So I'm with you. I feel you. Keep that passion up. Keep that same energy. Let's go.
We appreciate it, man. Thanks. Have a great night.
No problem.
Thanks, man. Good luck Sunday, dude.
Yes, sir. See you.
All right. So, Aaron, I know it's fun to have somebody like Michael on, and somebody who anybody who has that chance, go out there and find him. Michael Kist NFL on Twitter is a great
and also a great draft analyst too. So he's not just the Eagles guy. Come draft season, he does a lot of great work, and that's why he was so hard on Josh Allen.
Yeah,
I think.
Was not a fan. He was not a fan.
Yeah.
But what are you thinking for this week? And I know you kind of already hinted at it a little bit, and I don't think Michael was wrong in that, if this is, besides the Patriots, the toughest opponent we've played from a roster talent standpoint, that they, obviously have had their flaws. It hasn't been a great season so far by their standards, but this is still the most talented roster we've played outside the Patriots.
Yeah, it's a talented roster. A couple things that concern me about the way this game is lining up is Jalen Mills was back last week. He missed a couple of plays, but it was a game for him to get back healthy. He hadn't really played all year. He hasn't played in like a year and a half. Yeah. And then I don't think he's a great cornerback, but he's a lot better than Douglas. So they're getting an improvement there. Ronald Darby was back at practice today. He was dressed for the last game, didn't see any snaps, but he was good to go. So that tells me that he's definitely going to be playing this weekend. And again, I'm not the biggest Ronald Darby fan, but a huge upgrade for them. So they're seeing a significant upgrade at their cornerback position. So assuming that those guys are both good to go, I think that does change the problems that they're having on the defense with some of the play action stuff. I think those guys can maybe hang with a John Brown a little bit differently than their third, fourth cornerbacks can. So that doesn't sit well with me. Obviously, they still have a couple injuries, so that's kind of nice to have going into this game. When I watch this team, though, man, and I watch Jordan Howard, and anyone that's in the Slack channel knows that I was a big fan of Jordan Howard in free agency. I really wanted him to get into free agency and come with the Bills. I like the way he runs. He reminds me of a poor man's Frank Gore.
He's very much a younger, like I said, not quite to that standard, but that model.
Right. Not there. I'm not calling him Frank Gore, but he seems to always be falling forward, always be getting 4 yards. Those kind of running backs terrify me against the Bills. We've seen it over and over again throughout these 3 years of the Sean McDermott era. I hope that they can clean that up, but that scares me that a team that can really keep our offense off the field, and we saw that was really the way the Dolphins attacked us. They kept the offense off the field. I've never seen a third quarter like the game last weekend where each team only had one drive. That was super weird. 10 minutes. That's happened to our defense a number of times where teams were just able to run it down on us. And that is what concerns me about this game. And if they can establish that run, man, I have some big concerns. And I think you nailed it watching Matt Milano's progress this week. And I urge fans not to get too excited by video clips of him at practice running around or him being limited, because we've seen it a few times. They tend to err on the conservative side with these hamstring injuries and things like that, where if it's a little wet on the field come Sunday morning and he's not 100% to go, they're not going to put him out there. And that concerns me because it could be something that he's feeling good on Thursday, but if that hammy's tight at all Sunday morning, it might not look good. So we're not going to know until he's going to be probably a game time decision if I had to guess. Corey Thompson could be another thing. That's an ankle. That's not his timeline. You and Banged Up Bills had talked about it. His timeline is right about now. It was either last week or this week. You guys felt good about him coming back. So even if Milano can't go, I'll feel a lot better if Corey Thompson can go. If neither of them are going, man, everything that Kist just talked about scares me because it plays to their strengths and what they would be able to do to dominate us.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at the prognosis here this weekend. It's 70% chance of rain. It's supposed to rain all morning throughout Orchard Park, and that we're supposed to have a decent amount of wind. That's the kind of game that's only going to.
It's supposed to be nice at game time, but.
Yeah, it could be cleared up by then. We'll see how it goes. But, maybe that encourages them even further to really dedicate to the run. And even though Jason Peters doesn't look like he's going to play, you're still talking about a team with Jason Kels and with Lane Johnson, just phenomenal offensive linemen. They still have a ton of talent from that standpoint. Two really good tight ends in both Goddard and Zach Ertz. And
Dillard's a top prospect. I mean, we're playing Cody Ford, and we're excited about Cody Ford, so there's no reason to think that Dillard can't play to that level.
Oh, yeah. I think he's actually very similar. I think that he's struggled in pass blocking, but has been a monster in run blocking. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and that, I think a lot of it matters on whether Milano plays. If Milano plays, I feel a lot better about this game. I do think that a few of the things like Deshaun Jackson helps, because without having the threat of being able to beat us over the top, and you're telling me that Hyde and Poyer can stay close, can help support Levi Wallace, can help support Taron Johnson, can help support anywhere that's needed. that gives me a little bit more confidence. I do think Tremaine Edmonds can handle Zach Ertz better than most linebackers. I don't think many, if any, linebacker can. I think he can help with that. I do think that, some of the issues they've had with their injuries at guard helps us a little bit with the penetration we've seen from Matt Oliver and Jordan Phillips. And then flipping it over, the offense, Michael's right. If this is the time to get right, if you're going to hit one of those deep shots, and I know Eric reached out to Jordan Palmer talking to him about, hey, what should we really expect here? And that Jordan Palmer thinks it's getting close, and that it's just feel and rhythm, and that it's not a gap in skill set or capability. It's just once he starts to hit one and gets into a rhythm, it could really open up things. And that, I do think that we have a chance to be able to take this game, and that this was certainly one preseason that I had chalked up as a loss, because I do think that this is one of the best 53-man rosters in the NFL. But I'm going to predict a win, and I do think that we figure out a way to come away with this game. I don't know that it's going to be pretty. I do think that we see things tighten up. I think we could hit a couple deep shots. I don't know if we convert over and over and over again from a touchdown standpoint. But I do think that we could see something low scoring, like a 19-13. I think that it's something like that where we get in the end zone once and then 4 field goals, and we give up a little bit. But I do think that we're going to keep them pretty low scoring. I think the under is a good play from a gambling standpoint. And that I don't think our offense is quite to the point that we're going to be able to capitalize on where their secondary is from the 42 point that some other teams have put up, but getting yardage, getting first downs, getting into scoring position, and then being able to still get points out of that, and to keep our defense fresh and off the field. I do think we're going to be able to do that. So I'm going to predict something low scoring, 19-13 Buffalo.
All right. So my prediction will be, I don't love you. I've talked about it on Twitter. I've talked about it here tonight. I don't love going up against a desperate team. They really can't drop the 3 games in a row. I just don't love that. The Bills are still a little bit playing with house money. I think I'm going to stick to my original prediction when the preseason came out. I had the Bills at 11-5, but I did have them dropping this game here in the middle of their homestand. I'm going to stick with that. I think it'll be a close game. I'm going with 24-20 Eagles. And I don't really see – I think that the Bills might try to press the deep ball thing this week a little bit because that it might be available. I don't know if they hit or not. I don't think they need to. I think that whole thing, that entire narrative has been way overplayed. It's still, we talked about it a bunch in the Slack channel and on Twitter. It's a small amount of plays. It's a small success rate league wide anyways. It would be nice if they are hitting it. I don't think they need to. I think if they could put together some of the drives that they've been doing this year and do that, I think that would be this path to success for them. I think they will score some points doing that. I just think there's too much talent on that the other side of the ball, too much on paper, where I think at some point they're going to click. There's 2 teams right now in the Bills schedule. Well, now actually 3 because the Cowboys aren't really playing well, that at any point in any game, if they turn it on, they are better than our team across the board. And I think that the Eagles are one of these teams, even with their injuries, you've alluded to it, they're one of the better 53-man rosters. If they come to play and put together effort and a good game plan, they're going to be a hard team to beat. And so at 24-20, I think that, and it wouldn't be the end of the world for me, and I'm not even going to be that upset if they drop a game to the Philadelphia Eagles.
No, I do think that there's some things that Michael talked about the other way around. If you're going to drop a game, you want it to be one that's out of conference, that isn't going to hurt you in the division, isn't going to hurt you in a tiebreaker, a playoff scenario. So, it's not the worst game if things don't go just right. But I do think that it's still a game you want to be able to hit. And I think some of the things we touched on here can play into our wager scenarios that we've had going here. So I've got a couple for you. In the Eagles wins, let's write them down this time since we forget every single time. So in the Eagles wins so far, Jordan Howard has averaged 75 yards rushing. Would you think that he is going to be able to get over 74.5 yards against the Bills?
Yes.
I will take the under, and I will take that for 4 points.
74.5 yards for 4 points. Greg's taking the under.
Also, I know you had touched on you don't think that they're going to be able to or going to need to lean into this, and it hasn't been a strength so far, and it's been a big talking point, so one that I think we should put one out there. Do the Bills get a completion where the ball's in the air 30.5 yards or more?
No.
I'll take yes. I do think that they hit on one of them with the air. Finally, check that box of the air yards of the what everybody keeps hammering on with these deep completions. I think he finally gets one and gets people off their back.
Okay, how many points?
3 points. Are there any that stuck out to you? And again, for everybody listening, we've actually had some really good ones coming in that people have suggested here or there. So Aaron and I try to pick out 4 each game. So if you guys have any ideas for us, shoot them to us on Twitter. Let us know what you think might be a fun one. We try to pick some of the topical things that are going on that people are talking about here. Maybe one other one that we've spent a weird amount of time on. Do you think the Bills trade for anyone before the deadline?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you.
I don't either. There's a chance that they might. I don't think it's going to be anyone exciting, but I actually don't either.
Not going to rant because I'm not going to yell on anyone. And I know that last time you said you ranted, you got a bunch of people. Well, actually, you didn't really rant because you didn't yell into the microphone. Just on the trade thing, I've seen people are very one side or the other. Like the Bills have to make a trade or they have to stay put. And I don't think it's a linear thing like that. And I think Brandon Beane is making calls. He's probably been on the phone all week, as all GMs around the league are. I think that him and Dan Morgan have very specific values, and Joe Shane, they have very specific values of where they have on their own guys, their needs, and guys around the league. And if it isn't even in close range of that value, they're just saying, you know what, good luck. Call us if you don't get the value that you're looking for, and maybe we can have this conversation again. I don't think they're interested in overpaying. I think that they're very happy with the roster and don't want to upset the locker room that they have. So it has to be the right deal, the right guy at the right value. And for all those things to line up in the Bills' favor is pretty hard. I think right now everyone's trying to get a deal. Everybody's trying to one up the other guy. So I don't expect the Bills to make a move, but I know that they are in these conversations. And as it heats up over these next 6 days, teams could start calling the Bills back that they hung up on earlier and said, hey, all right, the market's not where we thought it was. You want to reapproach this deal. And if the right deal presents itself, Beane has he's proven that he absolutely will do it. But chill out, Twitter, on the only everybody else is trying to get good and the Bills are just sitting there, or they can't make a move at all. Let Beane do his job. I trust him. I trust the way he's built this roster. So not on that. What was your score prediction again, though? You had 19-13?
19-13.
All right. So Bills have given up 15.2 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
Would you take the under on that, since that was your prediction that they will give up under 15.2 points this game?
Yeah, I take 15 or under. So 15 and a half.
For 15 and a half for 3 points.
Yeah, I'll take the under on the Eagles total points. I think that's pretty close to actually what the team odds are. I think the overall over under for the game is 43. So yeah, maybe a little closer.
Vegas is wrong 20,
but
time.
Well, it's not too far off of where that is, and that's where the average is. Yeah, Vegas is never freaking wrong. It's crazy. So, but yeah, I think that's the ballpark. And I honestly think that's where they need to keep them to be able to take this home. I don't see the Bills putting up a bajillion points against about anybody.
In the trade conversation real quick here before we wrap up this show, I know obviously everybody wants to look at receiver. I'm actually super happy with the wide receiver room, and there's very few guys out there that I think would do anything, because you're going to have to cut somebody. So if they bring in a receiver, they've got to at least have more potential than Robert Woods. I think Andre Roberts is a lock to stay on this roster. It seems like Isaiah McKenzie has his role carved out, and they like him as the gadget guy. So those guys aren't going anywhere. It's got to be a guy that is going to outplay Robert Foster. And so I don't think they make a move at that portion of the wide receiver room. I think it would have to be a star type player that's going to move everybody down a notch. One thing that a lot of people haven't been talking about, but I know we've talked about, is linebacker. Are you that worried about linebacker where you think they need to make a depth move now? Because if Corey Thompson comes back healthy and Matt Milano comes back healthy, that room looks a lot better than it did a week ago. How concerned are you about the depth of that position moving forward? And you think that it needs to be addressed in trade? Or is it something that we can just continue to go and maybe bring guys in as they come off other teams, practice squads, et cetera, like that?
Yeah, so it's interesting that I've dialed back my level of concern over the past 3 days, and that a big piece of that is the combination of things, and that seeing what it looks like without Milano is concerning. But I also don't know that a guy that can step into that role is readily available. I was one that was kind of hammering on the Dejon Buchanan signing, and that he did sign with the Giants, and I can't blame him. He had a better chance to get a starting role, and that he's looking for his best position to be able to get a contract in 2020. So I don't fault him for not taking a depth role with us when he had a starting role with the Giants. But if we get both Milano and Corey Thompson back, and I know some people aren't sure about, Dodson is
Maybe.
coming back off his suspension, and that I don't know how serious they were with him anyways, but the fact that they've kind of rode that out and didn't release him when those allegations came out, and then wrote it out when the suspension came out, makes me think that they do have some intention of him being a back.
They've talked good about him when asked.
Yeah. So I those three being there, I don't know that we're going to bring in anybody that really moves the needle beyond them anyways. So, I don't think that a guy like that's readily available. I don't want to trade for a guy to be a third linebacker starter, because our third linebacker plays 30% of the time. So I don't want to invest a ton there. If they had a guy to go pick up from a depth standpoint, that's fine. And that if, we always see a couple veteran cuts after the trade deadline passes that teams weren't able to move because of usually the contract that they have. So if we see that somewhere and somebody shakes loose, by all means, I'll take somebody for free. But I think you're right. And you and I argued with some of our dear Twitter friends today, going over things that the phone lines are open, but Brandon Beane's shown that he's interested in a value. He's interested in what makes sense long term. He's not going to give up a lot for a guy that they either don't already know that they can reach an extension with, but he's not a rental guy. Let's use AJ Green, because that's the name that comes up over and over again. I don't think it's out of the question that they would look for him. I think he is a good locker room fit. I think he is a good skill set fit. I think he is the kind of guy that could fit in and be a fit here. The only way they would go do that is if they felt like they could re-sign him. I don't think they're going to give up draft capital for a rental. In the chat, Joe brought up Yannick Ngakoue, who I love, and is a 24-year-old guy. That's also a guy we could try to go sign in March. And that if we're going to have to give him $100 million deal anyways, maybe we just give him $100 million deal in March and don't also give up a first round pick on top of that. So I think that those are the kind of things that could come up, and that, again, you and I are fans. You've said it multiple times. If they trade for somebody, I'm going to be ecstatic and going to be excited about the shiny new toy. That's going to be great. But I don't expect him to make a flashy deal unless, again, it's something that they can already negotiate the extension on. And that counts for Ngakoue. That counts for AJ Green. That would have counted for Emmanuel Sanders. Any of those guys that are out there, Vic Beasley, any of those kind of players that the names have been thrown around, I don't expect them to do that. And that I saw a couple weird rumors about Robbie Anderson and Corey Davis and Devontae Parker. And I haven't seen any
doesn't move the needle for
any validity to those. Corey Davis is the kind of low risk guy that he was the 4th overall pick for a reason.
Sure,
but that hasn't panned out there. That if we can get him for a very cheap compensation, sure. But I don't know why Tennessee would give that up. They're still trying.
I don't
to
think Anderson's being moved.
I don't see them trading Anderson in the division and having to play him twice a year.
No. And the thing that I keep coming back to with a lot of the trades is Brandon Beane's comments often about ascending and descending players. I don't think they want to give up a lot of assets for a descending player, where AJ Green, the production doesn't lie. When he's healthy and he plays, he's one of the most productive wide receivers, probably the best Bengal to ever play for Cincinnati, maybe. I think he's in that
right
discussion.
There. Yeah, Anthony Munoz and him.
Right there. So he's got the production. He's proven that he's an elite wide receiver in this league when healthy. I don't know that he's ascending at 30 years old with a lot of injuries. I think that his time is pretty limited in this league. Ngakoue is definitely an ascending player. Here's a question to you that I struggle with is I like the Bills roster, and I like it in the depth of this roster too. And there are some guys that I'm willing to move on from if I'm willing to get a premier player. This year, though, do you hold, if you can't move a Shaq Lawson in this deal, or you can't move on from a defensive end as part of an Ngakoue deal type thing? I think what fans get lost in is then where do you shift the roster? Do you carry 5 defensive ends? Because I don't think that you can expose Daryl Johnson and try to bring him to the practice squad. I don't think you just cut a Shaq Lawson outright in a move like that because he is a solid run defender. Or do you cut a guy that you wouldn't normally cut and just send him to free agency in that sense? I think there's some roster juggling that people don't always think of when they think of these trades, and they say, hey, let's get good talent and figure it out later. There is some validity to that, but it's a tough decision for this team to make because they put this roster together.
No, I think you're spot on. I don't think you can expose Daryl Johnson to waivers. He hasn't been perfect. He's had some flaws here or there, but way too much potential. I almost think that if they went down this is not likely. We're not saying that we're predicting them to trade.
Yeah, we're like playing Dungeons and Dragons here. We're role playing.
This is all nonsense. If they got to the point where, one, they knew they could meet the draft compensation desire for the Jaguars, and they talked to Yannick Ngakoue's agent and knew they could preemptively agree to an extension, I actually only think you would do that if you had Shaq Lawson included in the deal, because obviously if you're signing Ngakoue to an extension, you're not signing Shaq Lawson in the spring.
Right.
And that's kind of the offer that you make them is, hey, you can have him as a trade-off, and that, hey, take
you
off
can do what you want with them from there,
a 4th round value from what the trade was going to be. If it was going to be a 1st and a 4th, can we give you a 1st and Shaq Lawson? Or whatever it might be, some combination like that. Because if not, you're right, they'd have to ride with 9 defensive linemen. You can't expose them. That's weird because then you're going to cut at another position that we might not have the depth at, and all of a sudden you're looking, do you then expose Tommy Sweeney to waivers and try to sneak him into the practice squad and roll with 3 tight ends? And it's something like that where you're going to have a domino
Johnson
effect.
or somebody.
No, exactly. So someone like that. Or, hey, this means we have to cut Maurice Alexander and now we're short on a special teams unit or something like that.
Sonoris Perry,
yeah, they'd have to figure out a way to do that.
I'd cut Sonoris Perry.
Yeah. All right. If we get Yannick Ngakoue, I'd cut all kinds of people. So, and I will say, I was very tempered in all the things that are out there. I agree with you. I don't see a need to trade for a wide receiver. I think we have a good wide receiver room. I don't know that a depth offensive tackle makes all that much sense. I threw out Tyler Sombrero. I saw with Harrison Phillips injured, you could probably upgrade from Kyle Pecco as your 4th defensive tackle, but you could probably do that on the veteran waiver wire anyways. I know Joe brought it up in the chat about are we going to see people cut? And I do think we'll see some movement there. So the one area that I would give up anything meaningful is a pass rusher. And the only one you'd want to do that for is a young pass rusher. That, granted, I'd love to find a way to get Von Miller, but that doesn't seem real. If Yannick Ngakoue's out there, he's the only name that I would give up something meaningful and take away a day one, 1st round level pick or multiple 2nd round picks, something like that. Beyond that, I just don't see any name out there that I would give up anything meaningful for.
Yeah, all I do know is on Twitter it is going to be a long 6 days until the trade deadline, and it might get insufferable, people.
Well, and beyond that, we have a game that will keep us entertained here and a chance to be able to look at, and that I don't think it's crazy that, a good game and winning, again, could encourage Bean to go out there and do something. I know I was a little frustrated. Jerry Sullivan asked a question on the press conference today to McDermott in that, do you need to go make a trade to show the locker room that they believe the roster that you believe in them? And I flipped that around and quote tweeted it saying that, do you need to make a trade to show one of them that they're not good enough? Because that's what you're saying, is that you need to get rid of one of them to cut them to bring in a guy that's better than them. So I don't think it's crazy.
McDermott kind of said that in the press conference today of the guys in the locker room know how we feel.
Correct.
And so I couldn't take that if they know how we feel, we're going to be aggressive and try to win now, or we know how we feel that this team is built to do what we want to do now. And that's how I took it. I took it as the latter.
He has to hedge, because even say that he and Bean are confident that they need to make a trade. And they both genuinely believe that. One, it makes no sense to put that out there publicly to lose any leverage. Two, you don't know that you're going to be able to actually execute one. We don't know how close they were if they were involved in Mohamed Sanu. Maybe they're the reason that the Patriots had to pay a second-round pick. Maybe the Bills were offering a third-round pick and the Patriots had to one-up that. We'll never know that because we have a tight-lipped front office. We're never going to know those things. So we don't know where that comes from. And if you're not going to be able to execute a trade, you need it out there that you said our roster is already good enough and we believe in the guys we have. Because if you make the trade, granted, one guy is not happy, and whether that's Sonoris Perry or someone at that level of the Maurice Alexander, someone isn't happy. But the other 52 guys are going to be excited and are going to be energized that, hey, look at that. They got us another reinforcement, another guy to fight with us. And that the reason that I believe and buy in so easily is that I don't think they're going to introduce the wrong guy into the locker room. I think they're going to have it vetted. Like you said, with Dan Morgan, it's going to be a guy that he's pounding the table for, that he knows he can believe in and is going to be the right fit. So if they pull off a trade, I'm fully on board and that it's going to be a good fit. But I don't expect it to happen.
Well, and I do think McDermott has talked about a lot, his leadership council. I think that there's a open line of communication with that council in matters like this and certain guys, and saying, hey, if a guy is a question to bring in the locker room, hey, Lorenzo and Patrick DeMarco, what do you guys think here? Do you think this is going to disrupt the balance that we've created? And I think that he leans on that part of the players, and it's just a good environment in an open communication environment. So I don't know. Again, I don't expect anything, but I think there's going to be a lot of rumors over the next 6 days. There's going to be a lot of arguments on Twitter over what we should do, but I'm focused on this game. I do think, even though I predict them to lose, I think this is a really great opportunity for them to go out and be a pretty good team. If they come out of this game, I think the national media really has to start changing the narrative about the Bills, because we're continuing to see, they haven't beaten anybody good. We saw this week, Football Outsider said, out of the 5-1 teams we've ever done, this is the worst DVOA 5-1 team. So I think if they can go 6-1 against a good roster, even though they're struggling this year, I think that there really isn't a lot of arguments that this team isn't a serious playoff contender.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that it has the potential to be able to really reset that narrative, and it is the second best team that they've played this year, right or wrong. So it is a good measuring stick from that standpoint, and I'd love to have the opportunity to force people to take them a little bit more seriously and to be able to look at that, and it will force the fans to be able to buy in and be like, hey, this is real. This is a playoff caliber team that we're playing, and a team that is the kind of team that we're going to have to beat when that time of year comes. And that's a great opportunity to be able to learn more about this team, and that we can see, was it really just not getting up for the Dolphins all the way? Was it a little bit of rust coming off the bye? Or were we exposing a little bit that, hey, maybe we have been fortunate and we've pulled out wins that we've stacked up now, but we still have plenty of improvement left and we're not quite there yet. And I think this weekend's going to be a great test to show that.
Absolutely. Yeah, man.
All right.
Hey, we got anything else for the people?
I think that's it. I think that's everything that we have for this week. Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronQuinn716, and always you can find me in the premium Slack channel if you go to cover1.net. Sign up for the premium if you haven't done it yet, man. I don't know what you're thinking. It's one of the best deals. It's one of the best environments. A great group of guys. I can't stress it enough. You hear me every week talk about it. I spend so much time, and I just really enjoy the conversations and the camaraderie that we've created over there on the Slack channel. So if you want a place to go talk Bills and you're kind of sick of Twitter and people dogging on you all the time and just making fun of you for your takes, come over to the Slack channel. I think it's a really fun environment. And just go to cover1.net, sign up for premium, and Eric will send you the link.
No, absolutely. It's a great opportunity, a great environment. If you like what you're listening to here, help us out wherever you're listening to us. Give us a like, give us a review, give us a rating, give us 5 stars, whatever the system is that you're on. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell someone at work. Help spread the word about what we're doing here so more people can enjoy it. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. Having a good time, embarrassing myself learning about hockey. So if you want to be able to enjoy the tomfoolery of me trying to figure out how the heck hockey works, come and enjoy that as well. But you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.